We got to go now to Dr. Sebastian Gorka. He's a former deputy assistant to the president of the United States, Donald J. Trump, and he joins us live now. Dr. Gorka, thanks for joining us today on Breitbart News Saturday.
Good morning, Matt. Great to be on the show.
So, big news over the course of this week, Dr. Gorka. We spent the whole first part of the show talking about healthcare, but I want to shift now to the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, DACA, executive amnesty from the Obama administration. And we saw, obviously, President Trump roll back DACA and announce that in 6 months he's going to phase out the program, but then also that he met with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer at the White House in the state dining room, and they had dinner, and during that dinner, apparently there was a deal cut. Now, the White House has kind of been a little shifty in terms of whether a deal was cut or not, and we've seen varying accounts, but the Democrats are certain that a deal was cut. I wanted to see, what are your thoughts on this whole DACA situation and so on and so forth?
Look, Matt, you know better than anyone that the President of the United States founded his presidential campaign on the question of illegal migration and the wall. It's not an accident that Senator Sessions was the first politician to endorse him, and Senator Sessions was the man when it came to stopping illegal migration. So the idea that suddenly that he's now president, he's going to undermine the platform, the key platform upon which his whole campaign was built and which propelled him into the White House, is of course bogus. But we know people like Chucky, we know that Nancy Pelosi, as soon as they think that they're getting something out of the president, they're going to blurt out, they're going to tweet it out, but it's just fake news. The bottom line is the president said it. He said it last week. He cut the Gordian knot. It was a Solomonic decision. He said DACA is unconstitutional. A president cannot legislate from the Oval Office, and that's when he told his now Attorney General Sessions to make the statement. DACA is over. Nevertheless, he's a kind-hearted man. You spent many, many hours with him. You know how kind-hearted Donald Trump is. He knows that the criminals go to prison. We deport the bad guys. We're not going to give amnesty to gangbangers from MS-13, but there are kids, or there were kids who came here through no fault of their parents, who will not be punished by deportation, but I expect some kind of work permit system or something like that to be put in place. So he's told Congress, work with me. And the biggest part of this story, you know it, Matt, the biggest part, the president, after 7 months of nothing from the GOP, has said, hey, guys, I've got an agenda. You don't want to help me? There's other people I'm going to work with, and look at what's happening, whether it's Congressman Dent or whether it's the potential primaries. He's sending a message to the GOP establishment.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing the GOP establishment really come under fire around the country. You mentioned Congressman Dent. It's very interesting. He's the co-chairman of the Tuesday Group, which is the so-called moderates.
Right.
I don't think they're moderate. I think that the people who are moderate and mainstream are us. But anyway, that being said, to use the terminology of Washington, one of the moderates, and there was a rally in his district that was put on by Ed Martin from Eagle Forum and Rick Manning from Americans for Limited Government, and then all of a sudden he announces he's retiring or resigning.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, right as a primary challenge was getting announced and all that kind of stuff. And I think we're seeing this battle play out, whether, in Alabama in this special election a little over a week from now, where Judge Roy Moore, the real conservative populist guy, is winning in all the polls against establishment-backed Luther Strange. And Luther's, he's got some redeeming qualities. Don't get me wrong. He's not all bad, but he's certainly not a Democrat. But he's not a Jeff Sessions like kind of guy, and that's Jeff Sessions' Senate seat. Then you've got other primaries popping up elsewhere around the country. It seems like the establishment Republicans are being put on notice that they either need to deliver or that there's other ways to do business.
Look, I've said this publicly, and I'll say it again on your show. the president was only accidentally the GOP candidate. He has nothing to do with the swamp. Let's remember, this is the first time in American history that somebody who hasn't served as a general or an admiral or who was not prior a politician became the president. That's what happened. This is the anti-establishment candidate. He's not a member of the swamp. And if the GOP thinks that they won last November the 8th, they will be very pleasantly surprised, not just in next year's elections, but in the numerous primaries that will occur. Because Donald Trump, like Brexit, is a very simple signal. Enough with politics as business as usual. Enough with the professional political class. You are not there to serve yourselves. You are there to serve the American people. And we've seen an attitude for 20 years plus where somebody is elected to represent the American people. They get to D.C. and they think they are smarter than the people who elected them and that they don't have to keep their promises. That ended on January the 20th at 12:01.
Yeah, and now, Dr. Gorka, one of the key things is, and I kind of want to get into this a little bit, is that, so I don't know if you saw this last night on CNN. He's Mark Short. He's the director of legislative affairs at the White House. Said that one of the President Trump. This is the tweet from CNN Politics. One of President Trump's aides on the border wall, that, quote, the definition of a wall, end quote, needs a conversation, in that Mark Short wants to have a debate about the definition of what is a border wall. What do you think about that? I mean, I think it's pretty clear what we want for a border wall, right? I don't know. What do you make of that?
I think we shouldn't read too much into that. The fact is, if you look at the geography of the United States, we will not be building a wall across the whole southern expanse because in some places you physically can't build a wall. However, the government is already prototyping the designs of walls that will be used where a wall is relevant. Sometimes it's going to be a fence, sometimes it's going to be another kind of barrier. But look, you can take this to the bank. The president will be building an impenetrable barrier across the southern border because he built his presidential campaign on that. How it's going to look, what color it's going to be, how tall it's going to be, that is a matter for the professionals to decide, but we have to seal the southern border, and the president knows it.
Mm-hmm. Now, Dr. Gorka, another thing is that so I did an interview this week with Senator Rand Paul about Afghanistan and other foreign intervention that the United States has been involved in. Now, obviously, one of the things that President Trump campaigned on was ending the Afghanistan war. I know that was an issue that you worked very hard on in the White House. And the president decided to end up going and doing a troop surge in Afghanistan, which kind of against his campaign promises. And Senator Paul says that the president should maybe go back to trusting his instincts, which were to end the war in Afghanistan, and also other U.S. intervention overseas in places that doesn't have a U.S. national security interest. For instance, the one place that continually comes up is the U.S. involvement in Saudi Arabia's war in Yemen. There's really not a U.S. national security interest there. But yet we are involved in providing supplies and refueling of Saudi planes and so on and so forth for their efforts there. The Senator Paul says that the president should go back to trusting his instincts and stop listening to these people who are whispering in his ear. What do you think about that?
Yeah, look, I'm not a fan of isolationist libertarianism because it didn't work in 1941 and it didn't work in 2001, September 11th. But in this case, the senator's right. The president is a supernaturally instinctual actor. I saw him do this. We had at least half a dozen meetings at the National Security Council on Afghanistan. And at every single meeting until the recent one after Steve and myself left the building, the president had the right instincts. He said, why should we care? What are you talking about when it comes to descriptions of a federal government functioning in Afghanistan? He would point out from history, right? Remember how they called, Ronald Reagan the dunce when the guy had been giving lectures on conservatism for 20 years. The president is lecturing the National Security Council, President Trump, on, Alexander the Great couldn't do it. The British couldn't do it, and the Soviets couldn't do it, so now we're going to construct a federal Afghanistan. He knows his history, and I think, unfortunately, he is being pressured to follow 16 years of conventional thinking. But I've predicted already, since I left the White House, changes will be made at the highest level soon, probably before Christmas, because the president will realize sooner or later that he is not being well served by the people that are left inside the building. Remember one thing, almost every single senior personnel decision or action since January the 20th, when it wasn't a resignation like myself or Steve Bannon, every other single person who was fired not by the president, but by somebody who works for the president. I predict that the president will be getting rid of people soon, and I look forward to that moment.
Wow, that is a bold prediction, and so and I hope you're right, because I think there are a lot of people in there who are not serving him well and have their own agendas and their own interests.
Well, not only that, Matt. I think Tucker Carlson nailed it. I don't think Tucker's a massive fan of Steve or Breitbart, but after Steve left, what did he say? He did a little segment where he said, "Whatever you think about Steve Bannon, he would not have been at home in the Clinton White House," which is absolutely true. He wouldn't have stepped into or been allowed into a Clinton White House. But right now, we have numerous members at the highest level in the administration who not only would have been at home in the Clinton White House, but would have been cabinet members in the Clinton White House. And that is wrong. That's not MAGA, and that's going to change. That's my prediction, Matt.
All right. Well, Dr. Sebastian Gorka, thanks as always for coming on the show, and we'll get this up on Breitbart.com later today.
Great. Thank you, Matt. God bless you and the listeners. Make America great again.
All right. Couldn't agree more. Thanks, brother.